Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be doing a look at the Spider-Man No Way Home media narrative, because obviously this film is doing crazy gangbusters at the box office, but there of course are a bunch of headlines coming out that are putting this film in a position that when you actually take true numbers into account and adjust for inflation, definitely, I think, will indicate just how the media is trying to get as many clicks as possible and spin the narrative to their own device. Now, obviously, that's kind of part of what the media does. They try to get as many clicks as they possibly can. They need to make money, but it definitely, I think, becomes a bit of a bigger issue when a media organization and an organization that's based on trying to provide news and facts and data relies on that kind of tactic in order for them to get clicks, because it kind of, I think, indicates that they are going to have, therefore, clear biases, as even Ground News, as I mentioned in previous videos, shows that Deadline has a clear left-leaning bias. The issue, of course, though, is that they fail to admit or disclose that information in their reporting, and I think that that is an incredibly important feat. So we'll go ahead and look at exactly where Spider-Man No Way Home would fall on an international box office and why them saying that it's number 8 of all time on the global charts is very misleading and obviously trying to get them some attention here. But before we get any further into this, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So if you want me to do a full global analysis and have all of the films that have been ever released on those top charts and do full adjustments for inflation and create a chart, please let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do that, because it's going to take a little bit of time, which I don't have a lot of extra time these days, especially as I'm still very much fighting and waiting for this darn Supreme Court to actually come out with a ruling, because guess what? It's having a direct impact on people all across the entire nation. It seems like these justices in their ivory tower do not care about the impact that it's going to have on the regular everyday worker. But again, I digress. But as we see from this headline here, Spider-Man No Way Home leads to $1.53 billion worldwide for number 8 of all-time global chart. Yes, all-time global chart. That's if of course you do not adjust for inflation. So speaking of that chart, here it is right here. So as you can see, Spider-Man No Way Home is now just ahead of Furious 7. Also, 2012's The Avengers. Man, the original Avengers film. This is ahead of Frozen 2, Avengers Age of Ultron, Black Panther. Oh man, this film's beating Black Panther. That's insane. The issue, of course, with this chart is that these are just the raw numbers. These are just the raw numbers that were being reported. None of these films have actually been adjusted for inflation. When you do that for films like, for instance, for Titanic, that film jumps up to be about $4 billion. And obviously, some are pointing out saying, well, is adjusting for inflation really the fair way to do it? Well, yes, actually it is, because we can't really track total ticket sales, because that's not really a metric that's ever really been tracked, at least in the modern box office. That's something that they used to track back in the day. They used to say, you know, we can actually tell you how many people, individual people, actually went to go see a film. But that's not really something that they talk about these days. I wish they did. I think that would be a fascinating thing to see, because that, to me, would be the ultimate metric of how successful or not successful a film actually is to see, okay, how many people actually went to go see your film? How many actual tickets did you pay? Or actually, how many actually tickets were bought in order to go see this movie? Because that would take into account and actually be a lot more fair, because then it takes into account the various ticket prices, the various parts of inflation, and also the different kinds of movie-going experiences. Because as of right now, you look at the total number, and sometimes those numbers can be heavily inflated by 3D, IMAX, things like that. That's why Avatar is at the top of this list, because most of the showings for Avatar were in crap 3D and were in high premium format theaters. Now, obviously, people were very much willing to spend that kind of money on the film, but I think it does still raise some questions. I know, River, it ticks me off too when they do these kinds of tricks, but I think it does bring into account saying, yeah, it might be number 1 on this list before you adjust for inflation, but it also seems to indicate that these are not necessarily the most successful as far as actual bodies in a theater going to see a film. I mean, if you think about an old school film from the 70s, like Star Wars, where there really wasn't an international presence at that time, and yet we know that film did crazy numbers as far as the number of people going to see the film multiple times to an insane degree. That, I think, should be taken into account, into consideration. But because we don't really have access to those types of numbers, adjusting for inflation is really the only thing that we can do. And here is the issue, and this is why I said if you want me to do a full breakdown of all these films adjusted for inflation, let me know in the comments below. But just taking one film, Furious 7, right? This film Spider-Man No Way Home just passed up Furious 7. This came out just about 7 years ago, and yet, because of inflation, and as you can see, Spider-Man No Way Home is just barely above where Furious 7 was, when you adjust those numbers, Furious 7 takes the lead once again. As you can see, I have this compared to Avengers Infinity War and also to Furious 7. Furious 7's total was $1.6 billion when adjusted for inflation, whereas currently No Way Home is at $1.5 billion. So even just taking this one film, right, very easy to do, adjusting it for inflation, you can see that this list begins to change very rapidly. So there's a ton of films on this list that are very far down, and yet you would see that they have films like 1993, 1999, and the further back you go, 1994, even going back to films that are probably going to be back from like, you know, the 80s or the 70s, right? For instance, Star Wars A New Hope is number 100, and yet I know for a fact that if you adjust that number, it's going to be pretty crazy, right? So in fact, let's go ahead and try and see if I can pull that up in real time, because you all know I love to do that. I love to pull these things up in real time if I can. So let's go ahead and pull up A New Hope and just see when we do the adjusted for inflation number, what kind of comparison that we get. So when you adjust for inflation, yep, Star Wars A New Hope jumps to $3.1 billion. This is a film that had, when you adjust for inflation, that can't be right, by the way. I'm going to have to look into that because I know I've done full breakdowns of this before. It's definitely a lot more than $45 million. There's just no way they could have made that, even adjusted for inflation, for $45 million. But as you can see, the domestic box office is where this film made its most money. It made $1.8 billion, $1.2 billion. And so, as you can see, just adjusting for inflation, this film jumps from number 100 to now over all of these films, which are in the, you know, the top 10 of the overall box office charting. And so adjustment for inflation is so crucial and so important because it really does have a major impact, and it's really the only fair way to take into account the number of people who actually want to go see a film. So what you see is that the media will continue to use Omicron as an excuse, use the pandemic, use the, you know, fear nonstop to push an agenda. But when it comes to them saying, hey, this film's beating the agenda, we can't really admit that, though. Let's go ahead then and just try to put a bunch of other buzzwords in there by saying, oh, it's number 8 of the worldwide all-time box office chart. And if you just take 2 films into account, this film then drops. So as I showed you, there were tons of films way ahead of A New Hope, which were released even back in the 90s, which we all know, once those were adjusted for inflation, it would indeed change the game quite a bit. So if you want me to do a full, like real-time or more so truly accurate worldwide box office chart, let me know. I tried to find it, and basically the 2 main box office sites that I use, The Numbers and Box Office Mojo, don't have any all-time worldwide adjusted for inflation. And some people might say, well, that's because, you know, you have other countries and other currencies. The big issue with that, though, is that all of it's still being reported in dollars, and so therefore all you need is that dollar metric, and then you can still adjust it because the value of the dollar is what is being adjusted for inflation. And so whatever was being reported at the time, because it's being reported in the value of dollars, it's still going to be an accurate counting nonetheless. And so let me know if you want me to take the time to do that when I have the time, or maybe I'll do that for a video tomorrow or for another time this week. But I just wanted to point this out because it's just something that grinds my gears when they're like, oh yeah, it's number 8 of all time. And it's like, look, I love the movie. It's great. It's doing fantastic. It's destroying all of those media narratives. However, to say that it is the number 8 film of all time, again, it doesn't even beat Furious 7 when adjusted for inflation. Star Wars, which is number 100, Star Wars A New Hope, when adjusted, it's at number 100 on this list, jumps already before you adjust any of the other films to inflation to number 1. So as you can see, this is a pretty big problem, and it's something that I really think if anyone in the box office media is going to be honest, if they're going to start to use that as a metric, they need to start actually using adjusted for inflation numbers, because that is the only true metric to show not just how successful current movies are, but also just how maybe far behind classics they are. How fewer people are going to see films, in fact, because that's another thing that I think adjusted for inflation also helps to point out, and that kind of pokes holes in a lot of these media narratives. But anyway, What are y'all's thoughts about these numbers here? Let me know in the comment section down below. Which movie do you think is going to end up being the largest grossing of all time? Pretty sure Titanic is going to be up there. But I would also love to see looking into films like Gone with the Wind, for instance, which I know had a huge success in the domestic box office. And, that was one where we actually do have metrics of how many people actually went to go see that movie. We actually have the actual ticket sale numbers there. So, again, let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. You're all amazing, beautiful people. Also, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been praying for me and for everyone who is in a situation where their work is in either jeopardy or is just in a kind of a limbo question mark because of these Supreme Court cases. So hopefully we get some work today, but obviously they can do whatever they want. They're in their ivory tower. They're protected. And so, but I just wanted to also say thank you for your prayers. Anyway, have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my January Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members. Starting first off with Locals, shout out to Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Biffer DeHobbit, and Robert Barnes. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Locals platform. Also a shout out to my Subscribe Star people, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson once again, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Subscribe Star platform. And lastly, to my Patreon supporters, my 30 Patreon supporters over there, animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle, 79, Lance, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ellen, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Benden, and Tina Bojan, and of course, Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you all so very much for your love and for your support. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and at the end of every video, please make sure that you support me over on a Patreon Subscribe Star or on Locals. Also, you get a ton of other goodies if you support at the Army of Asgard level and above. Starting at the Army of Asgard level, you get access to various giveaways that I do during the month, including various 4K titles. Many of them 4K Steelbook titles, and so if you want access to that, check out the Army of Asgard level on those platforms specifically. You also get access, once you are a Keeper the Bifrost level member, to that, plus a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where you actually get to ask us questions, and also, of course, get access to that and the library of previous podcast episodes. We're up to about 33 episodes now that we have been able to do. I think most of those episodes now at this point we've actually done it together, which has been a lot of fun. And of course, you can join at the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, Chosen of Valhalla live stream level, where you get access to not only all of those things, but also you get access to be featured on the channel once a month during the Chosen of Valhalla live stream with the other Chosen members, which is always a lot of fun. Also, during your first month, you get a free t-shirt sent anywhere in the world. You just let me know your size. Let me know the t-shirt that you want from the store over on Teespring or on TeePublic, whichever you prefer, and I will gladly send that out to you if you're at that level. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.